Within Oregon's Willamette Valley, on an eastern slope of the Eola-Amity Hills, lies the Evesham Wood Vineyard and Winery. Inspired by top small producers in Burgundy, Mary and Russ Raney started their venture in 1986. They focus on ripe, small yields and minimal intervention. The Raneys are charter members of the Deep Roots Coalition, an advocacy group for wines produced exclusively from non-irrigated vines. Their estate vineyard, Le Puy Sec, and the winery have been certified organic.
We got our certification for organic production in 2000, and of course when we did that, then we had to forego the use of certain chemicals for mildew and whatnot, and then of course all herbicides. And that's, I'd say, the weed control situation as an organic grower has been the biggest obstacle for us, and I think anyone here in the valley, because like I say, we have such wet, mild winters here that the weeds, when the vines are dormant, the weeds are already starting to just come out, like crazy. That and then powdery mildew is the only other issue we have of note, and that is pretty easily contained by the use of sulfur exclusively. We don't. We also use some potassium bicarbonate, which goes by the brand name Caligreen, which is also approved for organic use. But those two, and then a lime sulfur mix we use as a dormant spray are the only things pretty much that we use during the growing season here for control of mildew. Fortunately for Oregon, unlike eastern U.S. and Europe, where they have a little higher humidity levels in the summer, we don't have to deal with some of the other mold diseases like downy mildew and dead arm and Pierce's disease and things like that. So we're fairly lucky, although if we have a wetter than usual spring and early summer, we really have to be on top of the sprays, because if we're going to get powdery mildew, that's when it happens.
Evesham Wood lies in the Willamette Valley AVA, which is American Viticultural Area, and the sub-AVA of Eola-Amity Hills.
Actually, I and myself and Ted Castile at Bethel Heights were the two petitioners for the AVA to the federal government back in 2003. And so we essentially drew the boundaries for the AVA, and we based it primarily on a minimum 200-foot elevation level because, frankly, there are hardly any vineyards at all planted below that, and they probably shouldn't be anyway, because that soil type is a little bit too alluvial and gets a little bit too wet in the spring and summer. And so it's really more suited. It's basically the land like you see down below the flat valley, floor soil. And it's too vigorous really for vineyards, and so we've made the 200-foot elevation level the minimum. Just to give you an idea, the bottom of our vineyard is 300 feet, and where we're standing here is about 420. So we're still a relatively low site compared to some. But the other boundaries that we drew, in addition to the minimum elevation requirement, were related to developed areas. Like, we obviously we can't we can't include areas that are residential, suburban or whatever. And so we kind of went around West Salem, which is the west side of the river from downtown Salem, and then angled towards Highway 22. And so Highway 22 is the south boundary of the AVA, and then on the opposite side of the Eola Hills, on the west side, it's either the 200-foot level, or in some cases we went with a road, because it was easier to describe the boundaries to the federal government than trying to every nook and cranny. It's kind of a long, elongated AVA, and the one difference I'd say between our situation here and some of the other AVAs north of us is that we're for one thing, we're not contiguous to any other AVA. We're kind of a separate little island, and also island is an apt description as far as the geological situation, because we're surrounded by valley. The most unique characteristics of the Eola Hills versus some of the other AVAs is the type of volcanic soil or basalt-based soil we have. It's predominantly Nikaya series, they call it. It's a local name, and it refers to a shallower version of a iron-laden basalt soil that you see in other regions like Chehala Mountains, Dundee Hills. Their version of, and then we also have joy soil like they have as well here. But what you don't see up there that you see very frequently here is this Nikaya soil, which is often only about 12 or 14 inches down before you get into the fractured basalt pieces. There's usually a little less clay in our soil too, especially in our version of joy soil. here, they actually call it more often than not Jory silt loam versus Jory silt clay loam. And what they have is Jory silt clay loam with the higher iron content, so it's quite red. We have Jory soil in the middle of our vineyard, but where we're standing here, it's primarily basalt, Nicaea, and there's you see a lot more little pieces of basalt like this at the top, in the top layers of the soil. In the Dundee area, they will find some big boulders further down, but the upper 36 inches or so are pretty much rock-free. They don't see many rocks there. So essentially our soil is probably a little bit more naturally stressful, I'd say, on the vines, because it takes them a little longer to get established on this Nicaea soil, at least, because there's this fracture basalt, and the roots have to kind of find their way down into that layer of soil to get water. And which is another reason I haven't mentioned, actually, but we're very much advocates of non-irrigation in the vineyard. And that is in the production years, perhaps somewhat, or even spot watering when you're established in the vineyard the first couple of years. But once the vineyard's producing, we're opposed to using water partly for conservation reasons. We feel that water can better be used for row crops, annual crops and whatnot, and also from a quality standpoint, we feel that vines that are forced to find their own water, the roots grow more deeply into the soil, and it's those subsoils in the rock strata and whatnot where the uniqueness of a given vineyard site often lies. And so, by letting the vines do their own water search, then they can. You can basically derive a wine from a vineyard site like this that's more expressive of the terroir.